The year is 2012. The place is Chicago. The event is the National Fancy Food Show. A man named Julian Croft walks the floor. He wears a tailored suit. He is a senior buyer for a national grocery chain. He has tasted 417 products in 2 days. Chocolate from Ecuador, cheese from Vermont, olive oil from a single grove in California. He is tired. His palate is fatigued. He is looking for something true. He stops at a small booth. No fancy graphics, just a plain white banner. Vance Family Creamery. A woman with flour on her sleeve offers him a small spoon. It holds a dollop of white ice cream, just vanilla. He almost waves her off. Vanilla is the test. It is the easiest to make. It is the hardest to make well. He takes the spoon. He puts it in his mouth. And Julian Croft, a man paid to be cynical, a man who tastes excellence for a living, he stops. He closes his eyes. The noise of the convention hall fades away. There is only the taste. Cream. Not milk, not sugar. Pure, rich, unadulterated cream. It coats his tongue. A deep floral note of vanilla. The texture of cold silk. He opens his eyes. He looks at the woman. He looks at the small placard on the counter. Ingredients: Jersey cream, cane sugar, egg yolks, vanilla bean. That's it. 4 ingredients. He picks up the placard. He reads it again. He turns to his young assistant, a kid with a clipboard. Julian says one thing: cancel my next 3 appointments. This is the story of that cream. The story of the woman who made it. And the story of the man who told her it was a liability. This channel exists to tell stories just like this one. Stories about people who were counted out. People who built something lasting from the pieces they were left with. If you believe these stories matter, if you believe they deserve to be told, subscribe to this channel. Join the community that honors this kind of work. Because what happened to Alara Vance is happening to someone right now. And her story is proof of what comes next. Let's go back to March of 1994. The hills of southwestern Wisconsin. The snow is melting in dirty patches. The air smells of mud and manure, the promise of spring. Alara Vance stood in the yard of her family's farm. The farm was 360 acres, 180 in pasture, the rest in corn and alfalfa. It was her father's farm, and his father's before him. Alara was 34 years old. She ran the dairy herd, not Holsteins, the black and white cows of modern production. Alara had Jerseys, smaller cows, fawn-colored, with big, dark eyes. They were less efficient, the experts said. They gave less milk, but the milk they gave was different. It was golden. It was thick. It had a butterfat content of over 5%, sometimes 6%. The co-op's Holstein milk barely touched 4%. This was the source of Alara's pride and the source of her problem. For years, the local dairy cooperative had taken their milk. They paid a premium for the butterfat, a few cents per hundredweight. But things were changing. The co-op had a new manager, a new board, new equipment, a new focus on bottling fluid milk. For that, you need standardization. You need consistency. You need milk that is predictable. Alara's milk was anything but. She received a letter, a formal request for a meeting. She drove her Ford pickup into town. The co-op building was the biggest thing in town besides the church. White siding, green roof, a silo with the co-op's logo painted on the side. The manager's name was Frank Abernathy. He was a good man. Everyone said so. He coached the Little League team. He was a deacon at the church. He had a kind face and a firm handshake. His office was clean, a picture of his family on the desk. a plaque from the Chamber of Commerce on the wall. He offered Alara a cup of coffee. She took it. He sat behind his big oak desk. Frank cleared his throat. "Alara," he began, "we love your family. Your father and I have served on the town board for a decade. You know we respect the Vance farm." She nodded. She waited. "But we have a problem with your milk." He slid a piece of paper across the desk. It was a lab report. Her butterfat numbers were circled in red ink. 5.8%. Frank sighed. "It's just too rich, Alara." He spoke gently, like a doctor delivering bad news. "When we pump your milk into the bulk tank, it throws the whole batch off. We have to run it through the separator twice. It costs us time. It gums up the new homogenizer. It's a beautiful product, don't get me wrong, but for our fluid milk operation." He paused. He looked her right in the eye. "It's a liability." A liability. The word hung in the air. It was not an insult. It was a business term. Cold, clinical, final. He continued, "I can't justify the expense to the board. We can't keep taking your milk after the first of the month. I'm sorry. I truly am." He sounded sorry. He believed he was doing the right thing, protecting the co-op, protecting the other 94 families who depended on it. He was being responsible. He was being kind. Have you ever been told you couldn't do something? Not by an enemy, not by a rival, but by someone who genuinely believed they were protecting you. Someone who laid out all the reasonable, logical reasons for your failure. That certainty, delivered with kindness, is a unique kind of poison. It can't be fought with anger. It can't be dismissed as jealousy. It can only be disproven. And that takes decades. If you've ever felt that, drop a comment below. Tell us that story. Because Alara Vance sat in that chair, and she felt the weight of Frank Abernathy's kindness, and it was heavier than any anger would have been. She didn't argue. She didn't plead. She just nodded. She stood up. She placed the coffee cup on his desk. "Thank you for your time, Frank." She walked out. She got in her truck. She drove the 7 miles back to the farm. The lab report was on the seat next to her. The red circle felt like a brand, a liability. She pulled into the farmyard. Her father was on the porch, fixing a harness. His hands were old and stained with the work of 60 years. He looked up as she got out of the truck. He didn't ask how it went. He could see it on her face. She walked up the steps and sat down beside him. She handed him the lab report. He looked at it. He saw the number, 5.8%. He grunted. Then she told him the word Frank Abernathy used, liability. Her father was silent for a long time. He looked out at the pasture, at the fawn-colored cows grazing on the new spring grass. He picked up a piece of leather. He ran it through his hands. Finally, he spoke. His voice was quiet. "The cow doesn't know what a co-op is," he said. "She just makes the cream." He looked at his daughter. "You just find a home for it." That was all. No anger, no big speech, just a simple statement of fact. The cow makes the cream. You find it a home. In that moment, something shifted in Alara Vance. The shame of the refusal began to burn away, replaced by a cold, quiet resolve. He was right. Frank Abernathy wasn't the final word. The co-op wasn't the final word. The cow was the beginning. The cream was the truth. The rest was just a problem of logistics, a problem of imagination. That night, she didn't sleep. She sat at her kitchen table with a stack of her grandmother's old recipe books. She read about butter. She read about cheese. She read about clotted cream. And then she found it, a small section, handwritten notes in the margin. Ice cream. The recipes were simple: cream, sugar, eggs, fruit. Her grandmother had made it for barn raisings and church socials, a treat for special occasions. Ilara looked at the words. She looked at the lab report on the table. 5.8% butterfat. The state minimum for ice cream was 10% milk fat. Super premium ice creams went up to 16 or 18%, but that was after adding sugar and eggs. The base, the cream itself, had to be rich. Her cream wasn't a liability. It was a head start. The next morning she made a decision. She wasn't going to find a new co-op. She wasn't going to sell her cows. She was going to find a home for the cream, right here on the farm. This is where the story turns. This is where a refusal becomes a reason. An insult becomes an identity. Let me tell you about the next 2 years. They were not easy. First, she needed a freezer. Not a kitchen ice cream maker, a commercial batch freezer. She looked at new ones. The prices made her stomach clench. $15,000, $20,000, money she did not have. The co-op check was gone. So she looked in the classifieds. In the back of old dairy trade magazines, she found an ad for a farm auction in northern Minnesota, 250 miles away. The listing mentioned miscellaneous dairy equipment. She drove up in her truck. The farm was failing. The farmer was old and defeated. His equipment was rusting in the barn. And there it was, in a corner under a dusty tarp, a Taylor Model 754 batch freezer from the 1970s. It was dented. The stainless steel was dull, but it was a workhorse. She bought it for $600, cash. She and the old farmer wrestled it onto her truck. She got it home. She spent a month taking it apart, cleaning every gear, replacing every gasket. She used her father's tools. She read the faded manual by the light of a bare bulb in the barn. The smell of grease and steel filled the air. She put it back together. She held her breath and flipped the switch. The motor hummed to life. A deep, powerful sound. The sound of a second chance. Now, the recipe. She tried her grandmother's vanilla first. Cream, sugar, eggs. The first batch was a disaster. It was icy. The texture was wrong. The second batch was too sweet. The third didn't freeze right. She learned about science. The science of ice crystal formation. The role of fat and sugar in mouthfeel. The concept of overrun, the amount of air whipped into the ice cream. Supermarket ice cream is 100% overrun. Half of what you're buying is air. Ilara wanted something dense, something real. She wanted it to be less than 30% overrun. She made dozens of batches. She kept meticulous notes in a spiral notebook, adjusting the sugar by a gram, changing the aging time of the cream base by an hour. She failed and failed and failed again. Her father would come out to the barn. He'd taste a failed batch from a wooden spoon. He'd just nod. "Getting closer," he'd say. Finally, in the summer of 1995, she perfected it. The base was aged for exactly 24 hours. The temperature was dropped to precisely 22 degrees Fahrenheit. The churn speed was just right. She pulled the first perfect batch from the machine. It was thick. It was creamy. It was the color of old ivory. She tasted it, and for the first time in over a year, she smiled. It was the taste of her childhood. But it was also the taste of her future, the taste of her own work. She packed it in plain white pint containers. She took a cooler to the Saturday farmers market in town. She set up a card table, a handwritten sign, Vance Farm Ice Cream, $3 a pint. People were skeptical. Ice cream from a farm? Then one person tried a sample. Their eyes widened. They bought a pint. They told a friend. That friend came over. By noon, she had sold out. 24 pints, $72. Cash. She did it again the next week. Sold out. And the week after that. Soon, people were waiting for her when she arrived. Frank Abernathy saw her. He'd walk through the market on Saturday mornings. He saw her little table. He saw the line of people. He never said a word. He just watched. A quiet witness. One day, a man in a dusty station wagon pulled up to her table. He was older, with kind eyes and a warm smile. He bought a pint of vanilla. He ate a spoonful right there. He closed his eyes, just like the food critic would years later. He introduced himself. His name was Leo. He owned a small, beloved ice cream shop in Madison, a 7-hour round trip. He'd heard about her from a cousin. He told her, "I've been making ice cream for 40 years, and this is the best vanilla I have ever tasted." He asked about her cream. She told him the story, the co-op, the lab report, the word, liability. Leo shook his head. He took another bite of ice cream. "Honey," he said, "this isn't a liability. This is gold. Pure gold." He offered to buy every pint she could make. He offered her a price that made her gasp, but he also offered her something more valuable: advice. He told her how to scale, what equipment to buy next, how to navigate health codes. He became her mentor, her ally. He saw the value in what the co-op had discarded, and that changed everything. Because this is where the story stops being about one woman and a single freezer. This is where it becomes a business. Let me tell you about the next 15 years. The numbers stack up like drum beats. 1996. Elara Vance bought a second Taylor freezer, model 8756. Bigger, more powerful. $2,000. Cash. She was making 50 gallons a week, selling at 3 farmers markets, and to Leo's shop in Madison. 1998. She got into her first grocery store, the local independent in town. They gave her a small section of a freezer door. She sold more pints in a week than the big national brands. The store owner called her. He said, "I need a bigger order." 1999. Frank Abernathy drove past her farm. He saw a concrete slab being poured near the barn. A few weeks later, walls went up. A new building, small, but clean and modern. A sign went up, Vance Family Creamery. 2001. The creamery was operational. A walk-in freezer, a modern pasteurizer, a third batch freezer. All of it paid for. Cash. She hired her first 2 employees, neighbors, women she'd gone to school with. She was now a job creator in the same town where the co-op was laying people off. 2004. She bought her first refrigerated truck, a used Isuzu NPR, $10,000, cash. She was delivering her own ice cream to stores in Madison, Milwaukee, even across the river in Iowa. Her pints were in 50 different stores. 2007. She won her first award, a blue ribbon at the Wisconsin State Fair, Best Vanilla Ice Cream. The local paper ran a photo of her, holding the ribbon, standing in front of her creamery. Frank Abernathy saw the picture. He was at the diner, drinking coffee. He folded the paper and set it aside. He didn't say anything, but he felt something he couldn't quite name. It wasn't regret, not exactly. It was the quiet, unsettling feeling of having been completely and totally wrong. Wrong in a way that mattered. 2009. Vance Family Creamery was a regional brand, a fleet of 3 trucks,
12 employees, producing 500 gallons of ice cream a day, still using only cream from her own Jersey herd, still using the same 4 ingredients for her vanilla. She had never taken a loan, never gone into debt, never asked for permission. Every piece of steel, every gallon of gas, every payroll check, paid for with money she earned, cash. Self-sufficiency as the ultimate form of freedom. All the while, the dairy co-op was struggling. The price of commodity milk was volatile. Their margins were shrinking. They had tried to compete on volume. They had lost. They were just one of 100 small co-ops, selling a product with no identity, no story. And then came the reckoning. The year is 2010. The co-op board held an emergency meeting. The quarterly numbers were bad. They were losing money. Fast. The bank was getting nervous. They hired a consultant from the city, a young man with an MBA and sharp-creased trousers. He spent a month analyzing their business. He presented his report to the board. Frank Abernathy was there. He was 2 years from retirement. The consultant's message was blunt. You cannot survive selling fluid milk. The market has changed. You need to create a value-added product, something artisanal, something with a story. Artisan cheese, farmstead butter. He paused and looked around the room. Or even super premium ice cream. But for that, you need a different kind of milk. You need high solids, high butterfat milk. The room was silent. The board members looked at each other. One of them, a younger farmer, spoke up. Where would we get milk like that? All of us have Holsteins. The consultant shrugged. That's your challenge. Find it. The board members all turned their heads, slowly. They looked at one man, Frank Abernathy. He had been with the co-op for 40 years. He knew every dairy farmer in 3 counties. The board president looked at him. Frank, do you know anyone? Anyone with a Jersey herd? Anyone who might sell us some high-fat cream? And in that moment, in the silence of that boardroom, 16 years of watching from a distance came crashing down on Frank Abernathy. Her little table at the market, the new creamery building, the picture in the paper, the refrigerated trucks with her name on the side. He felt the blood drain from his face. He cleared his throat. Yes, he said. I know someone. The next day, he had to make the drive. The 7 miles to the Vance farm. A drive he had made in his mind 1,000 times. The farm was different now. The fences were new. The barn had a new steel roof. The gravel driveway was paved. A new sign stood at the entrance. Vance Family Creamery, home of Wisconsin's best vanilla. He parked his car next to a line of employee vehicles. He walked into the small office at the front of the creamery. Ilara was there. She was older now, of course. Lines of laughter and worry around her eyes. Her hands were still the hands of a farmer. She was not surprised to see him. She offered him a cup of coffee. He declined. They stood there in the quiet office. The hum of the freezers was a constant presence in the background. Frank, she said, it's been a long time. He nodded. He couldn't meet her eyes. He looked at a picture on the wall. A photo of her father, who had passed away 5 years earlier, standing proudly next to the first refrigerated truck. Frank took a deep breath. He explained the co-op situation, the consultant's report, the board's decision. He laid it all out, the facts, the numbers. Then he got to the point. Ilara, he said, we were wrong. I was wrong. We need your cream. "We need to make an ice cream line. We'd pay you a premium, any premium you want. We need you to save us." He had practiced the speech, but saying the words out loud made them feel hollow, pathetic. He finally looked at her. He expected anger. He expected her to shout, to say, "I told you so." He would have deserved it, but she did none of those things. She was perfectly still. Her expression was calm, not triumphant, not smug, just calm. She let the silence stretch out. She let him stand there with his request hanging in the air. Finally, she spoke. Her voice was quiet, devastating in its simplicity. "Frank," she said, "my cream was never the liability." She paused. The liability was not being able to see what it was worth. She let that sink in. Then she delivered the final blow. Not with malice, but with fact. "My cream already has a home." And with that, the conversation was over. He knew it. There was nothing left to say. He had come to her asking for a product, but what he was really asking for was forgiveness. And he had come 16 years too late. He nodded. He turned and walked out of her office. He got in his car, and he drove away. The quiet witness, his vigil finally over. But that's not the end of the story. Because a triumph is not just about proving someone wrong. It's about what you build after you've been proven right. Alara Vance could have stopped there. She could have run her successful business and enjoyed her victory. But she remembered the feeling of that day in Frank's office. The feeling of being told her work was a liability. She knew other small farmers were facing the same thing. Farmers with unique breeds of cows. Brown Swiss, Guernsey, Ayrshire. Farmers being told their product didn't fit the system. So she did something remarkable. She started a new line of ice cream. She called it the Producer's Reserve. Each flavor was made with milk and cream from a single specific farm. The farmer's picture and story were on the pint container. Shady Lane Guernsey Lemon Custard, made with cream from the Miller family farm. Northwood Ayrshire Strawberry, from the farm of a young couple just starting out. She paid them a price that was double the co-op rate. She gave them a home for their cream. She turned their liability into their brand. The Producer's Reserve line became her most popular. People didn't just buy the ice cream. They bought the story. They bought a connection to a family, a connection to the land. Then she went further. She established a scholarship at the University of Wisconsin, the Vance Family Creamery Grant for Food Science Innovation. It wasn't for students going to work at huge corporations. It was specifically for students who wanted to start their own small-batch artisanal food businesses. She was funding the next generation of Alara Vances. Her own daughter, Sarah, who had grown up packing pints and cleaning freezers, got her degree in agricultural business. She came home to the farm, not because she had to, but because she wanted to. She took over the day-to-day operations. Alara was still there, every morning, tasting the day's first batch of vanilla. Her father's words had become the company's motto. The cow makes the cream. We just find it a home. Today, if you visit the creamery, you can see it, in the main office, hanging on the wall in a simple wooden frame. It's a page from an old, yellowed recipe book, her grandmother's handwriting. Faded, but clear. The recipe for vanilla ice cream. Underneath it, in Alara's own hand, is a note she added years ago. It says, "Starting ingredient, 1 liability." That piece of paper is the physical artifact of this entire story. A reminder that the most valuable things are often the things that other people discard. A reminder that the most dangerous limitation is the one imposed by someone who genuinely believes they are protecting you. The story of Alara Vance is not just about ice cream. It's about the profound gap between what others decide you are capable of and what you can actually do. Right now, somewhere in the world, a young farmer is being told her milk is too rich. A programmer is being told her code isn't elegant enough.
An artist is being told his vision isn't commercial. A parent is being told her child will never achieve something. They are being told they are a liability. They are being told this by good people, by reasonable people, by people who are certain. This story is for them. It is proof that the work of decades is the only answer to the certainty of a moment. It is proof that you can build an empire out of what someone else threw away. If this story means something to you, if it reminds you of someone you know, or if it reminds you of yourself, share it. Share it with someone who needs to hear that their liability might just be their greatest asset. Subscribe for more stories of quiet, devastating triumph, and comment below with a time you or someone you love turned a liability into a legacy. Because these are the stories that build the world. One pint, one project, one quiet decision at a time.